Hey there, party people. Today we're at the video that my whole creating my own series was inevitably leading to, Fakemon. Why was it inevitable, you ask? Well, because while I've always enjoyed making OCs and using them for personal hobbies, I never really thought about sharing them in video format until I was inspired by the video series about the Fakemon Cascade region over on the channel Noggin and Loxton. While I didn't have any ideas for Pokemon OCs or even Fakemon at the time, I loved the way that he spoke about his Lakemon and went over them. And so I wanted to do much the same with my own characters, thus I started the series. Now the time has finally come where I can make my own Fakemon for my Celtic-inspired region known as the Creedy region. Creedy simply being the old Irish word for heart. And since it's old Irish, I may not be pronouncing that correctly. And trust me, we are going to be going over a bunch of Celtic languages in this video. I have done my best to get the pronunciations right, and I do apologize for when I fail regardless of that. Without further ado, let's introduce the first stages of the starters, all of whom I've given brief introductions to in the community tab, which I do post in a lot actually, and all the Fakemon art you see in this video has been drawn by the absolutely amazing and wonderful Hikoku. Their link is in the description below. Support them, they deserve it. And now, say hello to Htlart, Tonpup, and Folpy. They are all just so adorable and in different ways, which I am super happy about. They are also all pure grass, fire, and water type respectively, but will evolve into dual types. But before we get to those, we gotta talk about these guys first. Starting with Htlart, they are a friendly and curious Pokemon that loves to run around in large verdant fields. Their fur feels like soft, lush grass, and it is also said that if you end up following a stray Htlart into the woods, you could end up lost, possibly forever. However, that is just an old wives' tale in the region. They are actually more likely to help you while you're lost than anything else. Now the name Htlart. Now obviously it ends in elk, but it also comes from Eddie, the Irish word for the island of Ireland. Also, I am not about to get into the etymological differences between Eddie and Erin, for those of you who know that Erin also means Ireland. Just know that both are correct, just different use cases. Anyway, simply put, Htlart is an Irish elk, which will be relevant later. For now, we are moving on to the seemingly most popular of the three according to the poll I had, Tonpup. They are a very excitable and loyal Pokemon. When too excited, they constantly let out sparks while barking, making them prone to accidentally starting fires. And the thick gray fur on its back is silky soft when pet in one direction, but painfully coarse when pet in the other. As the primary inspiration for the dog of this little fella, I looked to the Welsh Terrier, which is known to be an excitable breed. They have a lot of energy, and if not properly managed, they can let it out in negative ways, thus sparky barks. The name comes from the Welsh word for fire, ton, and pup, like puppy dog. I should address this now, but I figured that for the names, I would keep them relatively simple and straightforward in their meaning, for the most part, since I am using unfamiliar words from languages that most people wouldn't know. The evolutions will become a bit more layered, but I felt like striking the balance was important. Though, speaking of simple, here we have Folpy. They're loving but a bit dim-witted. They enjoy swimming in dark waters among kelp and seaweed, generally giving other swimmers a fright when they just want to say hi. Their bodies are also very squishy aside from their hooves. And I do just want to squish that little head. It's so weird looking, but in the cutest way possible. I am also making it canon that they enjoy getting squished a little. They just reform as if nothing happened and give a cute little noise. The name comes from foal, a young horse, and kelpie, a shape-shifting water spirit from Scottish and Irish myth that usually takes the form of a horse. It is also a breed of dog from Scotland, but that's not actually relevant. Just a fun fact, and it's also what pops up in Google when you just search the word Kelpie alone. And before anyone says a damn thing, yes, we already have a Kelpie Pokemon, and a horse Pokemon that is based on the specific breed of real horse that I used as a base, the Clydesdale. But do you expect me to make a Celtic region and not make a Kelpie and Clydesdale Pokemon of my own? Do you want me to do Scotland dirty like that? Hasn't the English done enough to them? Anyway, with the idea that Fulpy is a Kelpie, its dual typing should be fairly obvious, so let's evolve it and see. Here is Keltrum, from Kelpie and the Scottish Gaelic word Tromlaia, meaning nightmare. Because hidden puns are fun, and so is rhyming. It's a water ghost type, by the way. Now sporting 2 new legs and keeping the fishtail, Keltrum is a bit of an awkward galloper, but still a very good swimmer. They generally have an air about them of not knowing what's going on at any given time, but they do follow directions very well. They also forget that they are now much bigger than a Fulpy, and will still try to do things that their size and more rigid body prevents them from doing. Its poofy mane always moves as if Keltrum is underwater even when on land, as spiritual energy flows through it. Legends say that if you were to ever anger the normally docile Pokemon to the point of it kicking you, the spirits of your ancestors will scold you in your dreams for the rest of your days. Now, I was considering to have some sort of transformative aspect to this Pokemon, but ultimately decided against that for a starter, instead opting for how the main is, both tying in the ghost typing a bit, and referencing that when a Kelpie does transform in Myth, they usually have water weeds in their hair or it's wet, as a way for you to know that you may be dealing with a Kelpie in disguise. And the dreams about angry ancestors do more than make the name more than just a pun. It ties into the themes of the story of the region that I want to make, tradition and progression. The Fulpy line actually falls in with the progression side of things, which will be explained when I get to the final evolution. But for now, we move on to Tonpop's evolution, Forkun. The name comes from the English word forge and the Welsh word for dog, kun. Don't you just love when languages are sparse with vowels? And again, like before, it's a very simple name with an unfamiliar word thrown in, but doesn't it sound so cool? Forkun, use Fire Fang! It just comes out so well. I love it. It is a fire steel type now, hence forge being part of its name. The gray fur on its back is now like a sheet of steel plating, and the fur on its lower jaw is still fur, but it's much more like how the gray fur was on Tonpup's back. And their stout bodies make them imposing protectors, even if they are still relatively small. Smithies and ironworkers love this Pokemon. Their strong jaws tear through metal, and they are able to taste the quality of it, letting their human partner know if they are working with good materials or not. The flames on their tails grow bright when they taste a good, high-quality metal, or when they're just warding off foes to protect their homes. There is less design philosophy to tie Forkun together compared to Keltrum, as I feel that this one is just more straightforward. It's an armored fire dog that can help with forging metals. So yeah, it's a fire steel type, and just look at it. Breed-wise, the idea is that it's meant to be some sort of halfway point between a Welsh Terrier and an Irish Wolfhound. Though, with the idea of this Pokemon working with people a lot in mind, now would probably be a good time to mention that in this region, starter Pokemon are more of a solid concept in this story. As in, it's more than just a fan term, but most trainers in this region actually do start with one of these 3 in some way, shape, or form. There are even specific starter Pokemon breeders that specially care for them to give to beginner trainers. It is overall a part of a very long-lasting tradition. However, in recent times, the idea of being locked to only these 3 to start off with has begun to shift. So it wouldn't be like every single trainer will have one throughout the story, and even in the past, starters have changed. so it wouldn't be like you'd see one every single trainer battle. But they will definitely be seen all over the region, much like Elk's evolution, Elele. The name comes from elk and shillelagh, an Irish walking stick and club. It has a bunch of different pronunciations depending on who you ask and the region and all that stuff, but I went with shillelagh because it gives Elele a nice bouncy feeling, like skipping through the meadows. Elele is now a grass fairy type Pokemon, and despite their gruff, annoyed looking demeanor, they are very kind and helpful Pokemon. They guide the young and the old down paths, allowing most anyone to lean on them for support. Even when they look bothered by it, they really aren't. They're just acting all cool and aloof. There is a general tradition when a Elele's antler falls off, they are made into walking sticks, hence why they look like shillelaghs. Even when they are not physically there, they are helping people. But more than support, they are also staunch protectors, battering away opponents with its antlers. Wild Elele tend to sleep encircled in a ring of the flowers that grow from the vines on its legs. It is said that should a person step into an Elele's bed, they will be spirited away to never be seen again. Now, of course, I am referencing fairy rings with that last bit, though those are made with mushrooms rather than flowers. But creative liberties and all that. Physically, Elele is simply just an adolescent green elk with shillelaghs for antlers. Really cannot get any more straightforward than that. The fairy type comes into play mostly with its wildly helpful nature, with a little tie into mysticism, but it explodes when it evolves. This is where the names get a bit more complicated, because this is Nueldrid. It comes from the Old Welsh word Nuithri, elk, and druid. Now, elk is self-explanatory, and most people know what druids are. So I'm going to shelf that for a second to go over what the hell a Nuithri is. Put simply, it is the life force in all things, as believed by the druids. And yes, druids are more than just a D&D class. They are a real religious group that people still identify as today. If there is a druid that happens to be watching this right now and wants to go into more detail about what Nuithri is in the comments, feel free to. It'd be a great learning experience for everyone, and I apologize again if I am butchering that pronunciation. That aside, Nueldrid have heavy ties to the lands and forests of the Crede region. They are said by some to be the messengers of the region's very spirit. And sure enough, they are protectors of all life, and lost travelers in the dark places of the woods have claimed to be found by Nueldrid. Frightened by them at first, but the Pokemon always leads that person towards where they were journeying to. The design is based off of stereotypical druids with the long, wizened beards and robes, but primarily it is an Irish elk, which is an extinct species of deer said to be one of the largest to have ever lived. Their first and only priority is to protect and improve those around it, and it genuinely makes no fuss about how to do that. Tried and true methods, or perhaps a new way that works even better, Nueldrid will simply do whichever it feels is best. The pure adaptability of nature itself courses through it, as nature itself will generally do what it always has done. But if it does need to change, as the man says,
I'm simply saying that life, finds a way.
The Firestarter, though, they're a bit more unchanging. Though that's less of a characteristic of the Pokemon itself, and more the people's view of it. This is Couragefun, the name coming from Cu, the Irish word for dog, rage, and Goyafun, the Welsh word for spear. This Pokemon lives for battle, and is seen as the hallmark of heroism and honor in the Crede region, as legends say that the greatest hero from the region had a Couragefun as their most trusted partner. And so many trainers starting out are drawn to the line from the off, wanting to obtain that legendary status for themselves. Though, of course, they eventually, well, hopefully, learn that it's not the Pokemon by itself that will bring about greatness, but the bond that you forge with them. For the design, it is now an Irish wolfhound, with a metal-like jaw that juts out, becoming like a spear tip. Superficially, this and its fire steel typing is in reference to the Luin of Htlart, a fiery lance from Irish myth, which also works as part of the initial lore, as it was also a weapon wielded by famous heroes in mythology. But you and I both know that I can't have a dog Pokemon mixed with a spear in a Celtic region and just leave it at that now, can I? How about I finish up the lore to really drive it home? Many would-be trainers of this Pokemon seeking fame learn fast after it reaches this stage whether or not they are really committed to the path that they have chosen. Ku Ragefun's love for a battle is such that it can enter a frenzied state where its belly bursts in a roaring flame, cloaking its body, and it becomes a force of destruction that can only be commanded by the most skilled of trainers. While in this battle frenzy, should its trainer waver, Ku Ragefun will lose all control and go on a rampage. This is something that will definitely be a signature move or maybe an ability. But if it wasn't obvious, I'm referencing Cu Chulainn, one of the most famous heroes in Irish myth who famously had his own battle frenzy state. Look, I even made the shiny match the Fate-stained Knight Ku, because I'm a nerd. This will not be the only Fate reference I will be making in this region, you have my word on that. But for now, we'll be wrapping up things with Volpe's final evolution, Clydeslept. The name coming from Clydesdale, but with a K because of Kelpie, and Sleipnir, Odin's 8-legged horse, and child of the Norse trickster god Loki that Marvel is too scared to tell you about. And yeah, that's also really all there is to the design of this. A Kelpie, a Clydesdale, and Sleipnir fused together and painted blue. But I still love how it looks so much. It rides the line between elegance and looking kinda derpy in a really nice way. But as stated before, this line of Pokemon is the newest addition to the starters of the region, as it took influence from and has branched off of another Pokemon species from a different region. Or maybe more accurately, that Pokemon mixed into the gene pool of a native Pokemon that eventually led to the Volpe line. The real-world reference to this is the Vikings invading all over the place. Ireland, England, Scotland, Wales, to name a few, and are also the most relevant ones. And due to their invasions, their gene pools and cultures would mix and spread in with the cultures that they interacted with, to put it way too nicely. Look, you and I both know that you don't want me to go into the nitty-gritty dark details in a Pokemon video about what the Vikings did. So, we are going with a G-rated explanation. Still, in the region's lore, Creedy would have had conflict with this other region in the past, but would be more amicable with its resolution in this history. Thus, the Volpe line weaves its way into the region's own culture. Two places coming together and moving forward, evolving and progressing due to the interactions with each other for both good and bad. And for Clydeslept itself, it is said that those it deems worthy to ride on its back will one day be taken to greatness, both in the living world and the spirit world. A great trainer in life to join the heroes of the past when their time has come, and their faithful Clydeslept will carry them all the way. So yes, riding this horse will bring you to Valhalla. Now, what won't take you to Valhalla, but would still be cool anyway, is telling me your thoughts on these 3 starter lines down in the comments below. I am super curious about what you all think, and if you voted on the poll, do you change your vote now, or are you happy with what you picked? Making these 9 has been super fun, and I'm currently working on some more Pokemon right now, along with trainers and stuff. No idea when I'll be able to get around to making another video about this, as these do take a lot of time and quite a lot of money, and I don't have a lot of either. But your continued support is more than enough to keep me going for the time being. So with that, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to catch you next time in the void. Later.